Welcome to the GoldMind podcast, where we help you unlock the treasures within. My name is Bennett Santana. I'm your host for the podcast today, and my goal is to basically help you transform, scale, and thrive. That's the goal that I have. In today's podcast, we're going to be covering probably the most important podcast I could ever give or help a person, and it's called The Power of Being, of Doing, and Having. And it's related to our series, that we've started with the other podcasts related to our goals. But I wanted to dive in deeper, and this is going to be the heart of our goal session. It's the heart because I'm going to explain it and give you some basic steps for you just to be able to lay out who you are, what you want to do, and what you want to have. And so, to start out, what I want to just share with you is a framework for this process. And so the framework is to think in terms of just three words: being, doing, and having. And so the concept of being and doing and having is all interrelated. A lot of times a person is looking at what you have. I get a lot of young people that say, oh, I wish I had this that you have. I wish I had that. But the concept to have what I have starts with looking at what I've done. And so, and you could obviously see what I've done. I'm in business. I have a family. I do multiple other things. And so these are things that I do. But the concept, before I did anything, I had to be something. And many years ago, I decided that I wanted to be a business owner. I was working with a large corporation, and I said to myself, you know what? If I don't start a business, I'm going to really regret it. That was the ultimate. That was the thought. I was thinking ahead, and I said, if I don't start this business, I know I'm working at this company. If I don't start this business, I'm truly going to regret it. I'd rather start the business and let it fail than for me to go through life saying, I never started it. And so we're going to be exploring more about that being, doing, and having. But this step is about writing down what you want to do, what you want to be, and what you want to have. And so I'm going to lay out 5 or 6 steps to this process. And so I'd like for you to take out your journal or a sheet of paper, but I particularly want you to be able to write this down by hand. And so what I want you to be thinking about is creating a list of what you want to do, what you want to be, what you want to have. And you could call this list my do, be, and have list. And so step 1 is we're going to write down those things. And so first of all, what does it mean to be, right? What did it mean to be? I had to say to myself, well, I wanted to be a business owner. In other words, the first step of doing anything is having the right mindset, the right character, the right values. And I knew that in order for me, a business owner, even though I had a bachelor's degree from Indiana University, when I started, right before I started the business, I went to DePaul and worked on a master's degree. And it wasn't even related to business. But I realized that I had to, I like to have, that my desire was to have a master's degree, right? Not just to say I have a master's degree, but I also, I wanted to have a couple more years of that discipline of going to school. And that discipline of going to school really builds character. And one of the things that I see in my own daughter's life, they've gone to business school. One's my stepson has an MBA, my daughter has another MBA, is that they've learned to be disciplined and they learned to multitask. And that was one of the benefits. So they had to be first, right? They had to be first. And it relates to what I'm doing in business. As a leader, as a team leader, I have to be the example for the team. And I'm the one that has to get up early. I'm the one that has to put everything into place. I'm the one that's working harder. So I have to be that image as a business owner. But above all, that I have an image of a person of integrity, a person that inherently is a giver. These are qualities that I had to develop in me. And if you look at the verse in Matthew that talks about every good tree bears good fruit, but bad trees bear bad fruit. And a good tree cannot bear bad fruit. And this is a start. You have to think about the future of what you're going to be producing. And really, you're producing fruit, right? If you go to a grocery store, you'll see, you go to the fruit section, it'll say produce. Produce. It's the word that we get productivity from. And when we start to do something, that's what we're producing, is productivity. We're producing produce. But whatever is at the root will come out. So if your thoughts are bad, your results are going to be bad. But if your results are good, your results are going to be good. And so this is what you have to constantly be thinking about. Who am I going to become, right? I said to myself, I was going to be a business owner. I wanted to be a person of integrity. I wanted to be a person that's honest, a person who's hardworking. So I decided many years ago that I needed to be that, a person who kept my word. And these are things that are inherently important. You find that executives that are running multi-million-dollar, billion-dollar corporations, these people are people of character. These people wake up early. They're not just a normal type of person. And so this is what I want to share with you. The first thing, if you're looking at this list, is you got to decide who you are and who you want to be. The second thing is, before you could have, you got to do. You got to do before you could have. That's the ultimate thing. And what does it mean to do? And that's taking action, right? That's moving in your personal power. I was working on a rehab project, and I wanted to get involved in the project. So I said, look, you provide the labor, I'll get the material. And so I, and you say, why would you do that? And no, because I wanted to pick out the type of material I had. I wanted to make sure, but also I saved about 25% of the markup. And yes, it took me a day or so of gathering all that stuff that I needed for those bathrooms and those floors. But the end result is that there's a profit in hard work. Whatever work that you apply, that's why it's like when you buy a car and you sell it, I hate folks that just flip a car and it's still dirty. I mean, at least wash it before you sell it. Put some labor into it. Give it a tune-up, change the brakes. If you were working in cars, I just hate to hear. And I heard an example where a person just doesn't even clean the car before he sells it. I'm like, there's missing something. And in Proverbs, it says, all hard work brings profit, but mere talk leads only to poverty. And that's the one thing I want to share with you. If things are heavy for you, let's just say, and you're hard to move to action, guess what? You're moving to poverty, right? So if you want to move to profit, you have to be a hard worker. And I could tell the difference between people in terms of how they look at hard work. Is it a burden, or hey, look, or they just take it on? And I love the folks that just take it on, that love to do hard work, that show up early, that doesn't mind doing extra work. Those are the folks that will lead to profit. Those are the folks that you want around you, that are not afraid to work. So that means that's the do part. And so, what about the have part, right? So listen, it's very simple. Being and doing equals having. That's the formula. There's no, nothing wrong with having what you have, right? Absolutely nothing wrong with it. In fact, when you look at, let's say you have a large house, right? Or let's say you have this or that. It's not a thing that, you're looking at from a greed standpoint. What those things are is make you more productive, right? I actually have a very large home. I do. I probably the second largest in the city at one time in my little city. And yet I have my office in my business. And I just converted the entire basement into an office. And it looks like a condo. Yeah, listen, the money I save and the productivity that I gain, you can't surpass it. And so, so there's nothing wrong with having things. There's nothing wrong with achieving things. It's all these things were placed in my heart. This house, I actually wrote down everything that I wanted in a house, and actually I could show you the list many years before that I wrote it, and that was it. And I got a couple of extra things. And so in life, an example is being like a loving and kind person, right? Loving and kind person that impact other people's lives. The doing could be acts of generosity, acts of service, and the having is what you get is relationships out of that. You'll get a sense of community out of that. It says that if you want to make friends, you have to be friendly. That's what one of the Proverbs says. And so it gives you an idea. It's like in business, you have to be a visionary and disciplined entrepreneur. That's who you got to be. And doing, you got to build the systems. You got to solve problems. You got to recruit. There's all these other things you're doing that goes on into that. And then the having is that you have financial success. You have a lasting legacy. Like in my business, I get called, please sell me your business, right? That's because I put in 30 years into this business. I have branded it, and then I get calls, hey, sell us your business. But I'm not at a point where I want to sell. And so, or whether I'll sell at all. And so that's the benefit of the having part, right? The why am I having it? Because prior to that, when I was down and my business was down on the on the ground, so to speak, I rebranded and I started building different brands, different marketplaces, and now there's that interest. And so there's a practical framework for remembering being, doing, and having. I call it a BDH, but in everything this really applies. So if you were an architect, you would have a blueprint. The second thing you would do is you would build. And then the third thing you would have a house, right? And so let's look at someone who paints. First, they would sketch, they would paint, and then they have a masterpiece, right? Same thing happens in farming. You plant, you basically cultivate the ground, and then you have a harvest. So also in success, you start, you strive, and you summit. That's, I just want to share these, just sort of metaphors, right? So another one is spark, flame, and glow. And this is the process that you have in life, is really the doing, the being, the doing, and the having. And so part of the step of writing down your the be, the do, the have goals is that you write it down with a pen or a pencil. Don't type it up. Find a sheet of paper that you could, or a journal, and I want you to write this down, because when you use your hands to write something down, you actually are putting your left brain and your right brain into play. And so just to let you know, the left brain is the logical, analytical side, and your right brain is the creative, emotional thinking. And so when you start to write your thoughts down, you're structuring your thoughts, you're using actually your left side of your brain. And then as you start to think through it, this is what I'm going to help you with in today's session, is to analyze a lot of your goals, right? There's the visionary part that I have to help you with, and I've done that even in the first session that we've done, is to help you visualize it, right? If you see, the whole start of in Genesis, it says, he said, let there be light, there was light. He saw the light. And that's the one thing that the right side will help you with. So the right side helps you to visualize the outcome, and it connects it with purpose. It connects it with purpose, and also the right side, produces the creativity, and it produces the solutions. And so we want to put those two together. As when you write this down, there's a brain synergy where you get clarity and vision, and you get improved focus, and you get a stronger retention, And then you have actionable inspirations when you put these two together. And so let me just kind of share with you, what's the science involved with this? Well, there's a newer science of writing. Writing by hand activates the reticular activating system. It's a network of neurons that filters information, prioritize what's important, and by writing your goals down, you signal to your brain, this matters. This matters. So you ever write a little card to someone, and you got to stop and write, and you know what that means? It matters. It matters. And so when you do write it down, you're engaging your whole brain, right? And you're creating some new pathways. And this is a whole process of rewiring your brain to help you move toward your goals. And so when you're specific, that's left brain. When you visualize, that's right brain. So when you get a chance, write it by hand. And I've done this. I have been doing my goals since 1996, every year. And I have a binder. And one time I went onto a computer program and I started using it. It wasn't quite as impactful, even though it helped me organize stuff and it wasn't as impactful, as memorable as when I wrote it down. And so that's why I just encourage you. Later we're going to have a PDF that you could fill this out. But for right now, just write it down in your journal, as I'm saying, your do's, your B's, your do's, your have. And so your next step, after you write all those down, I just try to ask you to write at least 50 down. Write at least 50. Try to stretch yourself. I sometimes ask folks for 100, but try to get at least 50 written down. And so your next step after you write those down is between the next 24 or 40 hours, I want you to put a word next to that one line, and that word is why. Why do you want that goal, right? Why do you want it? And that's going to help you prioritize. It's the why. A lot of times we may want something, but we can't really articulate it. Like, we want to lose weight, but the honest truth is why? Because it'll help you live longer. You want to save. The reason why, because you know what, you need maintenance for this building, or you want to buy a vehicle. You have to write the why. Why are you saving? Why? Because I want to do this. And so if this is where you basically just write down, why do you want it? Some of them are not going to have the right why, and so it may not have a why right now. That's fine. You're just something to observe. You're analyzing your goals. Is what you're doing. And so the next step related to these goals is I want you to shorten the list. Shorten the list, and just put a little dash on it. I don't want you to scratch them all out, because that goal might be for a future time period. And so with that process, just shorten the list. And so now step 4 is what I want you to do, is what we call a balanced life approach. And a balanced life approach is something that I learned through some coaching that I received through Dale Carnegie. This first thing they said, that you have to have goals in a balanced approach. And they actually had goals in the 7 areas. They said you need to have spiritual goals, you need to have financial goals, professional goals, self-improvement goals, health goals, family, and social. And there's an interconnection between 3 of those goals that are really interesting. In order for you to have a financial goal, let's say I want to make $100,000 and $200,000, you have to have a particular career, job, profession, right? That will support that. Under your profession, you have to have your earned income goals, your passive stream goals, your portfolio goals. These are things that you have to put down on paper, but to get to the finances, you have to have profession. But in order for you to have a career, right, or a profession or a job, you have to have a particular skill set, and that's self-improvement. And so these all relate, because, see, you have to have a skill set to get a good job. That good job will get you the finances. And so when you look at your goals, you got to go down and see where am I at where I can develop my competence? What schooling do I need to do this? I'm constantly in training. I paid hundreds of thousands of dollars in coaching. I'm still paying, coaching folks to help me in my self-improvement, because that relates to my career and then it relates to my financial goals. The other thing, super important in terms of when you look at your list from a balanced approach, is your family. Family is number one. That's the key component. I think a lot of reasons why we do this is our family. A lot of times I meet a young person, I want to buy my parents a house. I want to pay their house off, right? There's that family desire that's over there. And the last one is social or community. And this is how you relate to others and so forth. I'll give you an example. It says, where is this in the Bible? Jesus there's not much written about Jesus from the time he was 12 to the time he was 30. And so Jesus could not actually start his ministry, because at that time you weren't considered a man until you were 30 years old. And so from 12 to 30, he's in a holding pattern, because he can't become a rabbi until he's 30 years old. And so, but what does it say in that time? This is the only thing that's recorded. It's in Luke 2:52. It says, and Jesus grew in wisdom and stature in the favor of God and man. All right, you've probably heard that a couple times, but you know what? It highlights 4 or 5 areas of a balanced approach. I want to share this with you. So he grew in wisdom. Wisdom is basically knowledge, intellect, professional growth. It's the application of your knowledge and the experience that you gain is what produces wisdom. Right? Wisdom doesn't, yes, it says, ask for wisdom and you shall receive it abundantly. But the fact of the matter is, you have to go through life and you have to work through the knowledge, the information, and how you gain that wisdom. And so there was a continuous learning and mental growth for Jesus himself. And if you look at some of the stories that he has, he's very well aware of agriculture. He was very well aware of livestock management. He was very aware of taxes. He's very aware in all those concepts. Let alone how he had to read, the Torah and those kind of things, and how they actually turned to him to read it, and he would read it, verbatim. And so, if you look at Psalm 23, such a beautiful song, right? It's a much more impactful song. But if he read Psalm 22 for the first time, Psalm 22 that says, hey, there's going to be dogs circling, they're going to, do all these things to you, that would have made him very sad. And yet God knew that in 23. It made him happy. And so the thing is, Jesus was growing in wisdom. He was growing. That's what it says. He was growing in wisdom. And he was growing in stature. And stature relates to his stature, right? Your stature, your physical health, taking care of your body, your physical well-being. These are things that he had to take care of himself and grow as a young man to the man that he could be, where he could fast 40 days when he's 30, right? Think about that. I only know one person who fasted 40 days, and it was quite painful for him. He did it. He did fast 40 days, and that I know for sure, and guaranteed he actually he was in the hospital for a while. He had to pass the stone. It was difficult, but he did it. That's the only other person I know who's ever done it wasn't like what Jesus did fast. He did, I think, it was just food and so forth. But in any case, he grew in physical health, his stature. He grew in favor of God. That means that he was strengthening his relationship with God from the 12 to 30. He was spending time with God. He was getting up early, in the 3rd hour of the night to pray. That's stuff that he developed in that time. And then he grew with favor of man. This is interesting because he grew with favor with man, meaning that he was in social and relational connections with others. And he was building strong and meaningful relationships, obviously with his family, but with others. As you can see, when he... they lost him, and he was, talking with the scribes and the lawyers and so forth, and they were listening to him. And so at a very young age, he could talk to adults. And I know a young man, I'm going to tell you, he's like 12 years old. I'm like, hey, this kid is so cool. I wouldn't mind having a cup of coffee at Starbucks, just talk to him. And there are some young people that are like that. It's, at the young age, they just have the ability to converse. And so when you balance your goals, what you do is you prevent burnout. And because, see, one of the things in my case, I work really hard. And I realize that sometimes I get stressed out. And what I got to do is I got to go out to the woods. I'm the outdoor person. I got that Taino part of me from my Puerto Rican native side, indigenous side, that likes to go out hunting, go out fishing. You know, I'm not afraid of the snow. I'm not afraid of the heat. I love them all. And so I need to be out. Bennett Santana has to be out, sometimes just to take a drive and get out and listen to a couple messages on a 6-hour trip. You know, I do that so it helps me prevent burnout. That's how I get my life balance. It also promotes, you know, personal growth. When you have your spiritual goals, that's going to help you be grounded. It's going to give you some encouragement, some words. You know, obviously, when you read the scriptures, you're going to see that people have gone through many trials and tribulations, and they come out of it. And so it promotes personal growth. And in addition, when you have well-rounded, balanced goals, you build resilience. That's the one thing. When you have your health goals, when you have your financial goals, all those things, they build resilience because life is unpredictable. And having a balanced approach provides stability when you experience a setback. And because, see, if you're just solely concentrated on your work and let's say you get fired and you don't have anything else, I'll tell you that you're going to be one sad person. And so it's important, you know, to have strong relationships. It's important to have a focus on your faith. It's to help navigate these challenges. You know, if you listen to one of my podcasts that talks about the 3 stages of life, the first stage is preparation. That's where you're preparing yourself. The second phase is trials and tribulations. And everyone is going to face trials and tribulations, especially in business. And the next phase is manifestations, coming up on the stage. But having a balanced approach will build resiliency for you. And above all, having a balanced approach will strengthen relationships. And the relationship component is one of the most important components for living a long life. As the studies have shown that. And so, and I'll share with you a personal story later in terms of, you know, when I went through a trial and how you have to lean on family. That's all you have. And so having that balanced approach, there's tremendous benefits for having a foundation of happiness, of success, provide motivation and courage and these goals that you have, even though those tough trials that you have. So giving you some examples of a balanced approach, let's say in your goals for faith. And so, you know, the being is to be a devoted, let's say you want to be a devoted disciple of Christ, right? Just say that's your being. So by doing is really, you could say doing, I want to spend 15 minutes daily just reading the scriptures, reading the Bible. And then what will you get? You'll get joy, right? You'll develop a deeper, more joyful relationship with God. That's a simple be, do, and have. Another one is related to professional career and business. It's like you want to develop a mindset of an entrepreneur. Let's say you're not an entrepreneur. You could say, I want to be an entrepreneur and develop a mindset of an entrepreneur. So then what you could do is you could start to craft a detailed 5-year plan. That's what I did before I started. I wrote 3 business plans. I wasn't in business yet, but I wrote 3 business plans. That was my doing. And then the having was one of those business plans kicked off. And I was able to use that business plan to move in action, and it was already prepared. And so, you know, give you one more example. Relationships of being. So you want to be a loving, supporting husband or a wife or a parent or a friend. Now, let's say you're not married. Maybe you have a nephew or a niece. Or if you want to get married, you want to be, you know, you can say, I want to be a loving marriage, right? And so if you're married, hey, you schedule, you know, weekly date nights with your wife or husband. And so if you're not married, you know, you can start praying and going to church and visiting and being part of the singles group and so forth. And then the having is developing a deeper relationship with those family members, that relationship and so forth. So that gives you some examples of how to put this life together. So in talking about life balance with your goals and everything, you have to say is, what is true success? And I just want to share with you what I believe, true success is. From a perspective that, let's say if I was very successful and I became the best in my field, and, let's say I desire to be a very prosperous business owner, but I want you to insert your profession, whatever it is. The ultimate, you'd be the best business owner in the world, the best manager in the world, the best employee, most prosperous, successful employee, even the best pastor of church. And so to become the best in the whole world, let's say you're the best in the whole world, and in this situation, and one of those days, your children, they come to you and say to you, Dad, I wish that you had some time for me when I was growing up. Dad, I know that you're very successful now, and when I was younger, you were very busy. You had to work late hours, and you were always traveling, or you may be preaching around the world, and I didn't get to see you. Dad, it would have been great that when I was younger, you would have been able to put me to bed and read me a little story, because there's many nights when I felt really scared by myself, Dad. And so, Dad, it would have been nice for you to take me to school in the morning and encourage me, because, Dad, I was struggling with my weight, and a lot of kids used to talk to me and say bad things to me, and even so-called friends of mine in high school would betray me. They would say, Dad, I wish you were there at that time. Dad, it would have been nice for you to be in my volleyball games and that basketball game, especially when we play in this team, and they're fairly rough, and they when I went up to the layup, they pushed me down and I broke my ACL. I wish you would have been there, Dad, to take me to the hospital. Dad, I wish you would have spent time with me, as much time that you spent with your employees, with your business partners. I wish you would have been there for me, Dad, because you know what? Maybe my life wouldn't be as bad as it is now if you would have been there. And so let me just kind of say to you that if this happened to me, and thank God I didn't, because I was able to be there when my daughter's ACL was tore in that game. I was there every morning giving my daughter a pep talk when she walked into the high school. I was there for 99% of the games. I was there, although my business wasn't, was just, just down and out. I was still there for them. And I was able to, take them on trips, cross country in an RV. I've been able to do these kind of things. And so, if I wouldn't have been able to do that, if that happened to me, where I just push it all in the business, I would be a broken man right now. Because the love of my daughters and my substance, that's the most important thing to me. The love of my wife, that's the most important thing to me. And I've seen this results in other people. I've seen fathers who have just dedicated themselves to either business or church and just neglected their kids. And you know what? I see the sadness in their face, even now. And so I'm so grateful that although my business was near collapse, I took time to be with my kids. I took time to take them into school. I've been able to even I paid 100% of the college tuition, even despite my, business, in the dumps. And right now, what I could say is that I have two of my children that have MBAs, one with a bachelor's, one that's going to be a chef. And so that is the result, I believe, in having a balanced, goal plan. And I heard Ross Perot, he actually ran a company called Electronic Data Systems. He also ran for president many years ago. And they asked him, do you consider yourself a success? And he said he would only consider himself a success if his children were successful. Well, at that time, his two sons were presidents of public companies. And so and he says, because of that, I consider myself a success. In other words, his success was dependent on his children's success and then help them. Now, what about my wife, right? In this time, we've been married 29 years. She runs a nonprofit where she works with inner city youth in the arts. And she has a huge heart, and she's helped thousands of people. And I'll tell you, there's a vast community of people that will attribute their success to her. And she could walk in to a major gathering and by name just say, you were with me when you were 5 years old. You were with me when you were 6 years old. You were with me here and there and there. And so many people would come up to me and say, hey, your wife helped me start a business. Your wife is who I am now. But I just want to share with you is that I have a deep love for my wife. There's not a week that goes by that I don't think about the first weeks where I met her. I still think about that. And I truly think love is when you think about a person, past, present, and future. And that's one thing I do with my wife. I think about her in the past, I think about her today, and things we could do in the future. And so our romance for each other is if it was when we first met. It's exactly that. And I think about it. If I had lost my marriage because I was overworking or not spending time with her or because I was unfaithful to her, I would be a miserable man right now. Truly, truly lost man if I didn't have my wife. And so even when we lost our home in foreclosure, we're expecting the sheriff to come to take our house. And I thought she would leave me at that time. She stuck it out with me. And she was the one who stayed faithful. She was the one that was encouraging me during those times. And she didn't say, we lose this house, Ben, I'm gone. She didn't say that. And yet we were so close, to having the sheriff. We were within 6 weeks of having the sheriff come by. And my wife was there, in faith, believing and encouraging me. And guess what happened? We ended up saving that house. And so these are things that's the benefit that I believe of having family goals, having goals, related to your marriage. My library is right here, and I have many books that I've had to read about marriage. I've had to read about marriage. How many seminars I've taken on marriage. I've invested in things related to my marriage. And that's related because I wrote that down on goals. And so what if, think about the sacrifices of my health to gain prosperity. Or if I sacrifice my wife for my children, for fame, for fortune, I would be miserable today. That's not the purpose of moving into wealth. Beyond everything, my relationship with my wife is why I'm able to be here. Being able to, whatever I have is related to the support that I received from her. And so there are studies that talks about, there's a long-running study that was through the Harvard Study of Adult Development, that it's over an 80-year study, and they found that the folks that actually had close, supportive relationships lived the longest. So the key to living long is having close, supportive relationships. So not necessarily, if you're not married, many people aren't married, but that you have close, supportive relationships. Like I know a man who's divorced, and he lives with his kids. I mean, very strong support system for each other. And he provides for them, and they provide for him, and that's going to produce long life. And so there's a quote by Robert Waldinger, he was the director of that study. He says, good relationships don't just protect our body, it protects our brain. And then there's another study that talks about married people actually, have a higher level of satisfaction than singles, divorce. This is a study, National Bureau of Economic Research, 2014. But for those who know the scriptures, that's an obvious, study, because in Proverbs it says, he who finds a wife or husband finds what is good and receives favor from the Lord. And so, obviously, if you desire to be married, I encourage you, hey, keep that in prayer and move toward that. And so have a balanced approach to your life. And so in summation, it's like Mark says, for what will profit a man if he gains a whole world but loses his soul? That's one reason why I do this goal session. That's one reason why I do this podcast. What is it that you would profit as a business owner, as a person who, you're profitable, but you lose your soul? What's the purpose of that? And so that's just one thing I encourage you to have a balanced approach. And so the next step is I want you to cut the list down further. I want you to look at those goals and put them through a filter. And the filter, there's a couple filters here. It's a peace filter, let's just say it. Does it bring you peace in mind? When you look at it, will it improve your health? Will it improve your family relationships when you look at these goals, when you cut it down further? Will it make you more prosperous, just not in money, but in money, other things? Does it make you closer to God? These are the questions I want to ask you. And so those are, one filter that I ask you, the peace filter. But the other filter that I want you to ask you is expectations, unrealistic expectation filter. Is there a goal on there that's just totally unrealistic for you to achieve, right? Like, for instance, I was talking to someone about the passive income I want to be building for retirement, and he says, I want to build $1 million a year. A month. I'm like, are you doing $1 million a year now? No. But that was his goal. I'm like, that might be somewhat unrealistic right now. You may want to start to work yourself up. The other thing is the competence filter. The confidence filter is this something in your field? Do you know, about this goal? Can you really achieve it because you know it? You have skill set in it. Like, for instance, so many young men who want to be professional basketball players at a young age, and they just have this unrealistic, expectation. One, they're not being coached. Two, they're not practicing. Three, they're not even on a high school team, and yet they want to be a professional basketball player, right? And so you have to look at those goals there on those critical looks and basically, have a come to Jesus moment, right? Is this really real? And so now the next step is, and the final step for at least for this podcast, is I just want you to write when you want to achieve them. The ones that are left, when do you want to achieve them? And just put, let's say within a year, 1, 3, 5, 10, and 20 or 30. Just put it down in years. Just so the 1, 5, 10, 20, 30, 40. Your expectations for those goals. And so that will give you quite an impactful list. And we'll start to lay out, in the next session, we're going to be talking about long-term strategic and tactical goals. We're going to go into the nitty-gritty on the next podcast related to this. And so as I wrap up today's episode, let's take a moment to reflect on the framework that I've given you, that you should be exploring, is the being, the doing, and the having. And remember, everything you want in life starts with who you are. And who you are drives what you do. And what you do determines what you have. And so when you look at someone, what they have, that's what we're kind of seeing, right? What they're having. But you got to sit back and say, what are they doing? But above that, how are they being? What is their being? And so today I want to thank you for joining this episode of the GoldMind podcast. Listen, if you found this material valuable, I share it with someone else who could use a little bit of inspiration. And please don't forget to subscribe on my YouTube channel, Bennett.Santana, for additional tools to help you transform, scale, and thrive. Listen, leave a comment. I appreciate all your insight. And you guys, thank you for your time.